speakers are
She and her husband flew in from
extremely dear to me, and many of our 3E's families will know them. Michael, Jonna, and myself sat 5 years ago on their deck and came up with 3E's as an idea, and it has grown from 2 beds to 26 and continues to grow. And they have singularly transformed the lives of many of the parents that we work with on 3E's, and we'll share their insights on some of the family work in residential treatment. So, Michael and Jonna.
Hi everyone. Brandon left. I wanted to tell him that I'm using opposite action field right now. I don't like speaking in front of people, and I'm doing this because Blaze thought it would be a good idea. He wants to improve me all the time. And,
I like it just the way she is.
Since I'm a DPT therapist, I also try to take risks and change things that are difficult for me. It keeps me in touch with what we're asking our clients and parents to do. So we're going to talk about essential skills for parents when they have a child in residential treatment. And we really wrote this directed at the parents. We think that we hope that the therapists, as you listen, will increase your empathy for what it's like to have a child placed in a residential placement, whether it's inpatient or group home or any kind of placement. It's a particular kind of stress on the family system, and I think a terrible heartache when you get to that moment where the child can't be home. And parents, I think, they know intellectually that getting their child help is doing what the child needs and being a good parent, but the experience, I think, is very much more complicated than that. So I hand it over to Michael.
All right. We have a full half hour. So I'd like to, can you hear me out there? A little more, closer. This is better. Okay. I say this all the time when I speak to a gathering like this. At times my voice will drop. If you can't hear me, just raise your hand and I'll be cued to speak up louder rather than just getting mad at me. Raise your hand. So I'd like to just share a personal bit of my history with you. This is kind of recent history. But the backdrop of this is that I've been working with adolescents and families for now it's going to be well over 30 years, and have had a lot of experience in recommending residential treatment for kids, and having some appreciation of what it's like, the kind of disruption that happens in a family. But this was never as clear to me when I had to drop my son off at a school. So I want to tell you this story. Johnny keeps telling me, this is liable to show up on YouTube, and so I have to be careful what I say. So I imagine if you see her smack me, you'll know I've gone too far. But the story goes like this. Our son, in his mid-adolescence, began to show some troubles. School, he's a very bright guy, school started to fall apart. He was probably doing more drinking and partying than he should. He was angry and sullen. He had been told his whole life, which I think if there's nothing else you learn from what we have to say today, is he was told his whole life that he had enormous potential, which actually stops saying it to kids. It just makes things crazy. Having potential actually doesn't mean very much. It's actually the results that make a difference. Anyway, so he was going pretty much nowhere in his life, and we as a family got together and said, son, you're going to have to do something different. And so we started thinking about just regular boarding school. And he said to us, I'm not going to regular boarding school. If I go to regular boarding school, I will do what I have done everywhere else. I know how to get by. He's a very charming, personable guy. He said, I'm going to go to send me to military school. Now, I don't know from military schools. John doesn't know from military schools. So we said no. Right? How's that for validation? We didn't even consider it. We didn't even say, yeah, we know it's important to you. And we were not curious. The answer was no. But he's not a guy who takes no for an answer. And so he researched some military schools. John went down with him to look at them, and we found one. And then it was my job to take him down there. And so I took him to this place, and there were all these guys in uniform, and guys in camouflage and whatnot. And I had no idea what was going to happen to him. And he's just sort of tells me, it's better if you go now. And so I left. And I can tell you that I have never, ever, I've been through the loss of a parent, I've been through the loss of grandparents. I have never experienced such profound sadness and disappointment as I did in Charlottesville Airport after dropping him off. And for me, it brought home what it is for parents to come to the place where you're going to drop your kid off and someone else is going to take care of them. And so I have become so mindful about what it's like for parents to come to our program, what's going through their mind, and how we actually have to honor this experience. So that's what this talk is about. These are essential skills. Now, there are a million skills, but when John and I do the parent group at McLean, which is not a multi-family group, but just a parent group, because we've done it over the last 4 or 5 years, these are the things that we think are just terribly important for parents to know. So just briefly, when I'm talking about residential, just for the sake of this discussion, we're talking about inpatient units, short-term residential units, wilderness programs, any time that a parent is going to put their kid, their loved one, no matter how much of a pain in the ass they've been, they're going to put their loved one under someone else's care. Certain emotions are going to arise. Okay, so here's the thing. Folks, parents, it's not your fault. Just, you need to know that it's not your fault. And blaming yourself and having parents blame themselves is a road to nowhere. Just, you have to help parents get out of that mindset that they are the cause of the problem. They may have contributed to the problem, undoubtedly they have. They may have contributed to the problem getting worse, undoubtedly they have. But they are not the single problem here, okay? And you need to really highlight the difference between understanding the parent's role in the problem versus blaming yourself or your kid. And as the speakers before us have been highlighting, you have to really understand the transactional nature that goes on between parent and child. Okay, so this is not a linear kind of thing, but it sort of snowballs as time goes on. Okay, so now we are all going to put these DBT assumptions up here. I am a DBT trainer. I am, as Blaise said, becoming an expert on mentalization. It's going to be a while before I'm an expert on mentalization, but I do know the DBT assumptions, okay? And I'm not going to really go through these again because Alec went through them, but these are the kinds of things that we hold in our minds and we want our parents to hold in their minds when they're in treatment, okay? And it really is true that people are doing the best they can. And there's really no reason, no good reason to think otherwise. It just doesn't make sense. If you start to think that people are not doing the best they can, you're going to give up on them. You're going to get angry at them. Just assume that at any moment in time, this person before you is doing the best they can. Okay? Yeah, you have to hold in your mind that people want to improve. Okay? There's this business of she likes being sick, she gets benefit out of being sick. Really, just think about it. I mean, who would want to live the life of emotional suffering that people with borderline personality disorder? It just doesn't make any sense. And parents absolutely want the situation to change. I mean, the most, in some ways, the most important person in their lives is failing. They want the kid to get better. There's no two ways about it. This business of parents, this business that we used to say parents want their kids to be sick. Well, I'm just embarrassed that idea ever crossed through my mind. And even more embarrassed that at times I actually said it. Okay. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it is also true that all family members have to learn new behaviors in all relevant contexts. That is, improving your relationship with your mom, but leaving your dad on the outs, that is not going to work. You got to get better with both of your parents. And your parents have to get better with you. Okay. So, what are the typical parental emotional responses? Now, I have to tell you, I had these in the Charlottesville airport. I had all of them. And in a way that was awesome and stunning to me. They just came as a flood. You can assume that parents are going to feel guilty about having their kid in residential treatment. Okay? They're going to feel as if they had failed. Shame is going to show up. Just makes sense that shame is going to show up. They're going to be angry. Who knows who they're going to be angry at? Recently, a parent said in our parent group that when he gets worried, he just starts getting angry and blames who's ever in front of him. Okay, so anger is going to show up. It may be misdirected. Just accept it. It just makes sense. And if you're a parent, just accept that your anger is going to show up. It's normative. It makes sense. Stick with it. Of course, there's the sadness. That is going to just overwhelm you. And of course, there's also some relief. And then there's sometimes some guilt about being relieved, right? Okay. And then anxiety and fear. Is the treatment going to work? Is this the right treatment setting? How is my kid going to feel about me that I put them in a residential treatment setting? All of these are typical parental emotional responses to putting a child into a residential setting. Okay, now what do parents do when they have this response? Because it's very difficult for people just to tolerate their own emotions. Now, I don't know why this is. I think it's a design flaw in human beings. But I had nothing to do with the design of having to say. However, so when we can't tolerate what we're experiencing, what our emotional experiences, we often move into action as a way of managing what we feel. So, sometimes parents begin to withdraw from the child and the staff. That is, there's a kind of affirmation of their parental responsibilities. Okay? Don't get angry at them. Invite them back in. Okay? And if you're a parent, just notice, am I disappearing right now from my child's life? Am I sort of turning my kid over to the staff? Parents are going to feel de-skilled. They're going to feel like they did not have the skills to manage their child. And in some ways, that's true. Because we don't give out a manual when a kid is born and say, by the way, you've got an emotionally sensitive kid. There are things you're going to have to do differently than if your kid wasn't emotionally sensitive. So they're going to begin to feel de-skilled. Or you're liable to find parents who are attempting to micromanage the treatment. Right? These are the parents who call 4 times a day to see whether so-and-so has eaten, have they done their laundry, how are they doing in their treatment, okay? And then giving the clinicians a fair amount of advice about what they should do. Now, some of the advice you better listen to, because parents know their kids better than you do. But it also might be just sort of a way that the parent is not going to be able to tolerate the normative emotional experience that is generated by having a kid in residential. Okay? You with me? You're liable to get lots of requests for frequent contact and reassurance. Lots of reassurance. Okay? Reassurance is quicksand. Once you get into reassurance, it gets hopeless. So while it is understandable that a parent may need lots of reassurance, giving a parent lots of reassurance is only going to generate more reassurance-seeking behavior. So it's helping a parent in that situation, tolerating whatever it is that the emotion is that's getting them to look for reassurance. And then there's the blaming, blaming behavior of staff or the parenting partner. It's got to be somebody else's fault. It's really great if you can blame somebody else. When we're doing that, we often feel, well, think about when you blame somebody. Haven't you felt deliciously self-righteous? Really, it's just really something. Oh, it's not me, it's you. Right? So these are typical and understandable parental responses to putting a kid in residential, but they're also ineffective behaviors because what they're not addressing is, what's not being addressed is just being able to sit and tolerate your emotional experience. Okay? This is the hardest thing for parents, is to just sit still and tolerate their emotional experiencing. Parents are problem-solving machines. They're hardwired to try to solve their kids' problems. And where, I don't want to step on John's toes too much, where it may have worked in latency and early childhood, it does not work in adolescence. Okay. There you go.
Okay, so we sometimes say if you don't learn anything else, we run a parent group together, and we chime in all the time, so feel free.
I will.
This is a really tough thing for parents because they're obviously coming to our parent groups, they're getting their kids' treatment, they're sometimes getting their own treatment, trying to help solve their child's problems because that's their job at some level, right? But of course, it's an adolescent, and and therapists know this too. If we could solve our patients' problems, then we'd be out of a job eventually. Really, it would last a couple sessions, and there you go. So it's really for parents to not be to see their child suffering, which is, I'm a parent. I don't know that there's anything harder for me than to see my child suffering. And we really can't fix it. It's your child's job, and your job is to get out of the way in some ways, and to take good care of yourself, which is why these are the essential skills that we want to go over. Wish we had time for a discussion about this point, because parents often struggle with it, but we're big believers in it. So, parents, this is a very difficult time for the family, for the kid, and then we try to teach them mindfulness, which is a really difficult skill. Just trying to get at staying in the present moment without judgment. This is what we try to teach, and mostly I think it comes up for parents. Parents are either very worried about, well, if my kid doesn't get this behavior under control when he's 30, when she's 40, what's going to happen? We are always thinking about the future or ruminating about the past and what has happened. But I think for parents, it's the future fear that often pulls them out of mindfulness. So would really stress for parents that when you notice yourself writing history, bring yourself back to just the moment you're in, because that's all you can do anything about. We always say in the parent group, the only reason to think about the future is to plan. So dialectical thinking, which is sort of the foundation for being able to validate, which is the magical skill, interpersonally. So other people have talked about dialectical thinking as balancing multiple perspectives about a situation, holding more than one truth at the same time, and finding the wisdom in another's point of view. And if you if you have trouble with dialectical thinking, you're going to have trouble with validation. And validation seems to be the hardest skill for parents to learn. At least that's what the parents tell us. You know, if you're a clinician and you've worked with DBT for a long time, it starts to just become sort of muscle memory. You just do it. But if you're new to it, it's a very difficult thing to do. And, you know, if your kid is saying something to you that you disagree with, that you know is going to get your kid into trouble, you want to give them the facts. You want to give them the wisdom of your years. And, of course, we know that doesn't work. So validation, tentatively, with curiosity, communicating and understanding their mother's experience, and then another important piece for parents. So you teach how to validate your kid. Also teach parents how to validate themselves, because they've got a really, really tough job, and going through their child's difficulties is really, really hard. Often clinicians are always, very focused on helping the kid. Parents really need to be able to self-validate before they're going to be able to, or if they're going to be able to stick with validating their kid. The other thing, one of the reasons it's hard for parents is to get this concept that validation is not agreement or approval or resignation. So distress tolerance, the ability to manage your emotional experience when you actually can't solve the problem in front of you. And what were we thinking? I can't remember what we were thinking.
And see, this is why your husband is so important to you. See? Okay, so one of the hardest things to get parents to do is to sort of radically accept the situation that they're in. Okay? We're forever saying, if this didn't happen, if only if, this isn't fair, why is this always happening to us?
If only she would.
If only she would learn. I can't tell you the number of times parents say to me, if she would only do X, Y, or Z, and I'm thinking the same thing. If she would only do X, Y, or Z, she wouldn't be your kid and you wouldn't be in this situation. So radical acceptance is essentially accepting the moment as it is. Okay? And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. Okay? Especially when you have to accept is that your loved one is having trouble. This is not an easy thing to do. And so it really does require just opening yourself up. This is what I have. And of course, the way minds work, that will last for about, 20 seconds. And then you're no longer radically accepting it. So it does require turning your mind back to, this is what I've got. This is what's before me. Okay? And after a while, you get worn down on that. And so you have to be willing. Because willfulness shows up. I'm just not going to accept this anymore. My story about this is when I went to an airport. I needed to get a flight. And the guy said to me, your flight's been canceled. And I said, that's unacceptable. I won't go on about that. What did you do?
I remembered what I wanted to say about this, which is that accepting that your child is having these kind of problems and can no longer be in the home. You have to be really good at emotional experiencing in order to stick with acceptance that this is really happening. So, there's a lot of grief and sadness that's going to come forward when you really accept that this is what's happening for your child and that you don't know what the future is going to hold. So therefore, you just stay in the moment you're in. But I think that's the piece where we really sometimes get stuck. Parents, it's so painful. And of course, we're hardwired to move away from pain, physical or emotional. And so we always make sure we talk about the fact that you know that you're probably doing it right, acceptance, if you start to get more sad. Of course, on the other side of sadness is some freedom to think, to and to feel more things. But So radical acceptance is hard for all of us, all of our lives, and do have to keep turning your mind to do it. And so we teach willing hands, which, how many people here know willing hands? Oh, not that many. Well, this is just about the mind-body connection. So if you think about when you're distressed and having a difficult time accepting something, you might be like this, and you might be closed off. So this is just about holding yourself in an open way. And you can go and practice this, thinking about things that are difficult for you to accept. You know, you can hold them down on your side when you're sitting, or just like this, and do some diaphragmatic breathing, and just say yes to whatever is painful. So that is willing hands, and it's a little hokey, but it actually works, and I would encourage everyone to try it. So we've done a little emotion regulation for building resilience. This is doing things that the crisis survival strategies are really distress tolerance, doing things to distract yourself when you really can't manage. And parents sometimes have a difficult time doing this because they feel like if their child is suffering, they need to be suffering. And if they have moments of joy, or even if it's something minor, watching a TV program, going to a movie, having lunch with a friend, they have guilt. How can I do this when my child is in a residential or inpatient and is in so much pain? We really try to convince them that they're really not helping their child by suffering, and to really, they've got something really difficult in front of them, and they need to take good care of themselves, and that includes some healthy distractions. And then we also really push people to do things that they gave up when their child became ill. Couples stop going out to eat, stop seeing friends. Sometimes it's because they go out with friends and they hear about how great their friends' kids are doing, and that's a real heartache for them. But we do encourage them, golf, go back to golfing, go to the movies, see friends, and put those things back into your life that you gave up when your child became ill. It's really about taking care of yourself.